I grew up out on the West Coast, about 90 miles from Yosemite Valley. I've hunted, fished, skied, camped, and hiked in what I would consider very prime Bigfoot areas of activity, and never once did I ever recall hearing or seeing anything that would make me believe that Bigfoot exists. Now, having said that, I also remember as a young adolescent watching the Patterson-Gimlin film in 1967 when it first hit the news medias, feeling chills and goosebumps, looking at this large, hairy biped running, or at least briskly walking on the sand, headed for the tree line. It looked very real. I, at the time, didn't think it was a fake. The thing looked alive and was quite moving for me. And for a time, as a young person, I pursued the thought of that Bigfoot might exist, but over time that faded. Now, after graduating from college and moving to the Southwest, and over 4 decades of mature adult life, again, never heard or saw anything that would make me believe that Bigfoot existed. That all changed back in early spring 2003. My son and I were night fishing along a remote section of creek, heavily wooded. It was past midnight. I'm sitting there at my fishing pole, folding chairs by the creek. Had my pickup truck parked up close to the creek with a Coleman lantern on the tailgate. I want to say around 1 o'clock in the morning. At some point, I began to hear something moving down the creek bank towards us, our side of the creek. I'm going to estimate maybe 200 yards away when I first became aware of the noise. Again, nothing concerning. Maybe a brush of leaves here, crackle of leaves, a limb. I could just tell something was steadily moving closer to us. Really didn't concern me. You have all kinds of night animals, raccoons, coyotes, armadillos, and all kinds of different nightlife. And we also were on the apex of a side slough that fed into the creek, so we had water on the west and north sides of us, and a pretty open parking lot. So the chances of something getting right upon us without knowing it was from slim to none. And at some point, while fishing and just aware of this noise to my north, I got the very distinct feeling of being watched. Began to kind of look around, was aware of that movement on the north side. The first feeling I had was that somebody was close by watching us, gonna mess with us. The thought of possibly a homeless person or a crook or some troll going to come up and try to rob us crossed my mind. It's always there. Having spent 22 years in public safety, retiring from a position of investigative law enforcement, I know bad things happen to good people, so I've always got that in the back of my mind. At some point, I heard the very distinct sound of a branch being stepped on and cracked. There was a distinct snap there. Not something that a four-legged animal, light four-legged animal, their feet, would not be. it told me there was something heavy there with a little bit of mass, more like what you would expect if a horse stepped on something or somebody stepped on a big, a branch on the ground. But it was a very distinct snap, which caused my level of alertness to peak up a little bit. I looked over, kind of at the brush line. Well, it was over 100 feet away on the other side of that side slough, with just a dim Coleman lantern there. You wouldn't see much. Somebody could almost be standing there, still, and you wouldn't make them out. So I went over to the truck, and I grabbed a Q-beam spotlight, and I began to pan and scan that tree line off to our right. And I wasn't expecting to see anything. It was more out of curiosity than anything else. But at some point in my moving that circle of light up and down the brush line, I momentarily caught a facial shape. Now, it wasn't like sticking out of the brush, but it was illuminated through the cracks and gaps in the branches and leaves. It was a facial shape that was in, the circle of light, quickly passed by. Well, when I reacted and finally put the light back, I couldn't find it, but my son noticed me kind of, jerk, and he turned over there. He was still fishing, over there by the truck. And he asked me, he said, "Dad, what are you doing?" And, I didn't want to spook him. He was 15 at the time. I didn't want to, "Oh, there's somebody over there." I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to, shake him or anything. So I just said, "Oh, no, not much. Just looking, trying to minimize." But, in my mind, I'm thinking, what did I see over there? Is there somebody over there? So I went ahead and put the Q-beam back up in the truck, went back over and started fishing. Well, I'm going to say not more than 10 minutes, not less than 5. I'm sitting there maybe 2 feet from the creek bank, and I catch this matter of fact, this movement. And as I look over there, the object arcs down and it hits, I'm going to say 5 feet from us, off of the edge there. And the thing produced a splash about like a 50-pound child doing a cannonball off the high dive. A kawoosh, not a little splunk or splash. This was a kawoosh, and both my son and I, kind of fall back in our folding chairs. And by this time, there's large drops of water splattering on us, and I jump up, and my son races over to me and just grabs me, hugging me up tight, and his eyes as big as plates darting around going, "What was that? What was that?" He's freaking out. Well, I feel the same way, but I'm not freaking out. I'm trying to at least maintain, some calm here. But the first thought that entered my mind was that was a very large object. It came in at a very, appreciable speed from over 100 feet away, and if it would have hit us, it could have fractured legs, pelvis, possibly killed us if it hit us solid, maybe in the head or something. So I jump up feeling quite threatened at that point, and I race over to the truck and forget the little 380 in my shirt pocket. I grabbed the 357 out of the truck. And the first thing, first thoughts I had was there was somebody messing with us, okay? We were in an area that was open, public land. We weren't trespassing. We weren't doing anything. We're out there quietly fishing. I became very angry that we were being, messed with. And I yelled out, I said, "That's not funny. If you throw something," I said, "that's not funny. I have a gun. If you throw something that big at us again, I just may shoot back." And, just warning them, don't mess with us. I was mad. I was angry. I moved over as close as I could to the one side of the slough, listening. Couldn't hear a thing. Still angry, still upset. I cocked that revolver back, single action. I aimed it straight down in the mud beside me. I wasn't dangerously or carelessly aiming at brush or anything, but I put the gun straight down by my right foot, plugged my right ear because I knew it was going to be loud. Of course, my son's putting his hands, both hands on his ears, and I just blast around down into the mud there beside me. And, if you've ever, heard a 357, it's pretty loud. It was a loud boom. The moment the gun went off, on the other side of the brush line there, if you're a hunter, you know what a big deer or elk or moose or just a big animal taking off in thick brush, it's quite distinctive. There's a lot of snapping, cracking, Basically, that's what I heard on the other side of that side slough. For me to run or try to navigate through that with all the briars and bushes and trees, it would have been impossible for me to run through it. Even at any kind of speed, there would be things grabbing me or occluding me. Whatever that was on the other side of the slough there went through that stuff like a baby bulldozer. I mean, I remember looking at my son, listening to it, and both of our jaws kind of drop open, and the speed of that thing never slowed down. We could hear it fading out after about 100, 200 yards, still on the move. And after it faded out and obviously had cleared the area, my son looked at me, and I kind of looked at him. He goes, "Dad, what was that?" I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and I said, "Son, I don't know, but let's get out of here." After, that incident on the creek, I questioned a few people for a period of time. Different people asking if anything like that had ever happened to them. After a while, the strangeness, the questions, and everything, it faded off, and I kind of pretty much forgot about it. For I want to say a year or two, maybe 2004, 2005, maybe a year or two went by without. I just basically forgot about it. Thought it was an odd occurrence that I had no real answers for. Nobody could tell me what it could be. And of course, myself being an outdoorsman most of my life, I knew no animal in North Texas or even the U.S. that I knew of could hold and move. Yes, you have bears, you have mountain lions, you have big animals, but nothing even remotely agile enough to pick up a rock and throw it like that from that distance. And after I went back out there, I realized that this wasn't a person, or at least anybody that I knew of, that threw this thing, judged on the size. Now, the object didn't float. Was it a large piece of concrete? Possibly. Big, huge, dry clay dirt clod? Possibly. But I knew it had enough mass to produce a very big splash. Nothing came up out of the water. I'm watching my line. It wasn't a beaver coming up, popping its tail. The object came in from that brush line. I considered all possibilities and couldn't come up with any clear answers. At some point, I was surfing the internet and I came across I don't know if I was Google, whatever, but the thread that came up was 3 fishermen attacked along a river at night while fishing. And that thread led me to the BFRO website. I read the story. I was totally bumfuzzled, or astounded, more than bumfuzzled. I was astounded that the scenario was almost a perfect template for what my son and I experienced. There was a few little differences, but very, very similar. And it really, I was overwhelmed with the literally hundreds of documented sightings of this. Well, again, Bigfoot didn't enter in, but there was at that time a organization, which I won't mention, were having a conference that I went ahead and attended, trying to find answers. While I was there, I talked to some of the leaders of that organization and basically told them my story, and it was quickly dismissed by them that the area that this occurred did not have Bigfoot activity, that it was way too close to a metropolitan area, and they gave me a number of reasons, and basically, I found no help there, no answers. At some point, I made contact with the BFRO, or a BFRO, an associate that did contact me, was an investigator with BFRO, did contact me, had several long phone discussions, and answered a huge amount of my questions. One of which was, yes, there has been documented activity in that area, but none of those stories are presently published on their website. But yes, there has been some reports taken there. And from that point, a whole new chapter in my life began to develop.